In the wilderness, survival is all about life or death. Over the years, trappers, hunters and pioneers mastered the wild. They built shelter in minutes, set traps that fed them through brutal winters, and travelled hundreds of miles through uncharted wilderness with nothing but instinct and experience to guide them. Today, most of these techniques have faded into history, lost in a world of modern convenience. But out here in the untamed wild, those skills meant everything. Here's what life was really like for the mountain men who carved out existence in North America's most dangerous frontier. Hey, quick thing before we start. If you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's at, so comment your city and what time it is. Weird to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I'm recording this at night here in the States. Alright, let's head back to the American frontier. Trust me, it's going to be quite a ride. But first, get comfortable. Seriously, adjust those pillows, pull up that blanket, because where we're going, you're going to want to be cozy. The cold hits you first. It always does. That knife-edge chill that slices through whatever sleep you manage to find. Your eyes crack open to darkness, the kind of pitch black that makes you wonder if you've gone blind overnight. The rough wool of your bedroll scratches against your face, stiff with frost, despite being tucked under the meagre shelter of pine boughs. October 1831. The Rocky Mountains don't care what month the calendar says. Winter comes when it damn well pleases up here, and it's coming now. You're thinking, wait, how did people actually sleep outside in these temperatures? Good question. Badly. They slept badly, not like your temperature-controlled bedroom with that memory foam mattress. Your body aches from yesterday's 20-mile trek, muscles screaming from climbing ridges, crossing streams, breaking trail, hands raw and cracked from the dry mountain air. The ground beneath you might as well be stone, because it is stone, with just a thin layer of pine needles and one wool blanket between you and the frozen earth. James, you alive over there? The voice comes from a few feet away, gravelly, worn by years of mountain winters and too much whiskey. Old Bill, your reluctant mentor in this life, already stirring despite the ungodly hour. Unfortunately, you croak back, your voice strange to your own ears, after days, with barely a word spoken between you. Sun's coming soon, Bill grunts. Need to check them traps before some damn wolverine beats us to it. Fun fact from a historian I talked to, mountain men didn't talk much. When you spend weeks or months without human contact, you kind of forget how conversations work. Makes social anxiety today seem pretty tame by comparison. The reality of your situation crawls back into your consciousness. You've been in the mountains for nearly 3 months now. A greenhorn, that's what Bill calls you. A city boy from St. Louis who thought trapping beaver would be an adventure, a way to make your fortune in the West. What a damn fool you were. You've learned, though. Had to. The mountains kill the unprepared faster than you can say hypothermia. Your stomach growls, reminding you it's been 2 days since your last proper meal. Stringy rabbit that Bill snared, cooked over a small fire. You're saving the last of the pemmican for true emergency. That's rule 1 up here. Ration like your life depends on it. Because it absolutely does. You hear that? Bill's voice cuts through your thoughts, suddenly alert. You freeze, straining your ears against the pre-dawn silence. Nothing at first, then. A snapping twig, something moving through the trees around your camp. Bear, you whisper, your heart suddenly hammering against your ribs. Bill shakes his head, eyes narrowed. Too careful for bear. The air shifts, a new smell carried on the breeze. Smoke. Wood smoke mixed with something else. the unmistakable scent of other humans. "Black feet," Bill whispers, so low you barely hear it. Oh shit. I should explain something here. In 1831, the Blackfeet weren't exactly thrilled about trappers in their territory. Like, kill you and take your scalp. Not thrilled. Not without reason. Trappers were basically resource thieves from their perspective. Your hand finds the rifle beside your bedroll, fingers curling around cold metal. Easy, Bill murmurs. No need to die today. I know what you're thinking. Just shoot them. Yeah, that's a great way to get very dead very fast. Blackfeet warriors weren't exactly intimidated by one gun against potentially dozens of them. Bill slowly, carefully reaches for his possible bag, a leather pouch containing all his personal items. From it, he pulls something small, wrapped in cloth. "Trade beads," he mouths silently. The sky is lightening now, faintest grey, pushing back the darkness. Through the trees you catch glimpses of movement, not just one or two shapes, many. "When they come," Bill whispers, "you let me talk. You don't touch that rifle unless I say. You understand?" You nod, mouth too dry to form words. The mountains are harsh, but the people, both native and newcomers, those are who you really had to worry about. Trust was as valuable as beaver pelts, and twice as rare. This situation, this is Tuesday for a mountain man. The constant knowledge that you're one wrong move away from death, not from wild animals or freezing or starving, though those are definitely on the table, but from other humans who see you as a threat or as walking supplies they need more than you do. You're suddenly very aware that your comfortable bed is thousands of miles and 190 years away. The first warrior steps into the clearing, tall, face-painted red and black, a trade musket in his hands. Behind him, more emerge from the trees, 7, 8, 9 of them, all armed. Bill slowly, carefully sits up, keeping his hands visible. His face shows nothing. Not fear, not anger, just a flat neutrality that comes from years of these encounters. "Speak any English?" Bill asks, his voice steady. The lead warrior says nothing, dark eyes moving from Bill to you, then to your small camp, assessing, calculating. "We got trade," Bill says, holding up the beads, then gesturing to their packs. "Tobacco, too. You barely breathe, certain each heartbeat is your last. Your rifle seems impossibly far away now, useless against so many." The warrior speaks, not to Bill, but to the others behind him, a rapid flow of words you don't understand. "What's happening?" you mouth to Bill. He doesn't answer, his attention locked on the exchange happening among the warriors. The lead warrior steps forward, points at your packs, then at the stream nearby. "They want to know if we've seen beaver sign," Bill translates, asking if we're trapping this valley. And just like that, you understand. They're not here to kill you, at least not yet. They're checking their hunting grounds, seeing if you're depleting the resource they also depend on. "Tell them we just got here," you whisper. "Tell them we're passing through." Bill nods, speaks in broken Blackfoot mixed with hand signs, points west, makes motion of travelling, shows empty hands to indicate no traps set yet. The lead warrior considers this, speaks again. Bill's shoulders relax slightly. They're moving on, but they want the beads and some coffee. "That's it?" you ask, disbelieving. "That's it," Bill confirms. "For now." The transaction is quick. Bill hands over the beads and a small pouch of coffee grounds. The warriors take them without comment, then as quickly as they appeared, melt back into the forest. You release a breath you didn't realize you were holding. "Jesus Christ," you whisper. "I thought we were dead." Bill gives a short laugh, the sound rusty from disuse. "Days young. Still plenty of time for dying." Mountain men had a different relationship with death than we do. It wasn't some distant, sanitized concept. It was a daily neighbor, the guy who might come knocking any minute. "Let's get moving," Bill says, already rolling up his bedding. "Need to be at the river by midday." And just like that, you're packing up. The sun's barely cresting the mountains, painting the snow-dusted peaks gold and pink. Any other time you'd call it beautiful. Now it just means you've survived another night. That's the first thing I learned researching mountain men. Survival wasn't an exceptional circumstance. It was the daily condition. Every single day was about making it to the next one. As you follow Bill down the slope toward the river valley, your mind drifts to what awaits you there. The whole reason you're in this godforsaken wilderness to begin with: beaver. Those flat-tailed, buck-toothed engineers of the waterways were worth their weight in gold back then, or more accurately, their pelts were. A single prime beaver pelt could fetch 4 sixters in 1831. That's like $120, $180 today, all for a fancy hat back east. "Stop wool gathering," Bill grunts over his shoulder. "Watch where you're stepping." You focus back on the trail, or what passes for one, a game path, barely visible, winding through pine and aspen. One wrong step on these slopes could mean a broken ankle, and a broken ankle out here might as well put a gun to your head. "How much further to the river?" you ask, adjusting the heavy pack on your shoulders. Bill doesn't turn around. "When we get there, we'll be there." Classic mountain man answer. These guys didn't wear watches, didn't carry calendars. Time was measured in seasons, in daylight, in distance travelled. Speaking of which, I spent an embarrassing amount of time researching how far mountain men typically travelled in a day. The answer, it varied wildly. On good terrain, maybe 15-20 miles. In mountains or bad weather, sometimes just 3 to 5. They weren't trying to set records, they were trying to not die. 2 hours later, you're soaked with sweat despite the cold. The slope has grown steeper, the forest denser. Your thighs burn with the effort of picking through deadfall and rock. Then you hear it, the distant rush of water. Bill pauses, head cocked, listening. "River's up, spring melt's still coming down from the high country." That's not great news. High water means dangerous trapping. Another hour of hard hiking brings you to a clearing, and there it is, the river. Not some gentle bubbling stream, but a churning, frothing monster cutting through the valley like a liquid knife. "Now we get to work," Bill says, dropping his pack. "This is where the real business of being a mountain man begins. Not the romanticized horseback riding through stunning vistas that you see in paintings. The brutal, exhausting, often disgusting work of harvesting beaver." "First thing," Bill says, opening his pack, "we need to make bait." He pulls out a small, dark object wrapped in oilcloth, unwraps it carefully. "What is that?" you ask, though the smell already gives you a clue. Sharp, musky, like nothing you've encountered before. "Castor gland," Bill says, holding up what looks like a shriveled, dark brown lump about the size of your thumb. "From the last beaver I took, back in April." The experts I talked to said this was basically a beaver's ball sack. I asked one historian. "Not exactly," he said. "Castor glands are located near the beaver's back end, but they're not testicles. They produce a substance called castoreum that beavers use to mark their territory." Whatever the anatomical specifics, the important thing was this: it stank, and beavers could smell it from remarkable distances. You watch as Bill takes out a small pot and begins to prepare the bait. He adds the gland, then pulls small pouches from his possible bag. "Cinnamon," he explains, adding a pinch of brown powder, clove, nutmeg, and he pulls out a flask, pouring a splash of amber liquid into the mixture. Whiskey! The resulting paste looks like something you'd scrape off your boot, but to a beaver, apparently irresistible. Why does that work, you ask, trying not to gag at the smell? Bill shrugs. Smells like another beaver. Males think it's competition. Females think it's a mate. Either way, they come looking. That's the brilliant simplicity of frontier knowledge. No scientific papers, no controlled experiments, just generations of trial and error passed down by those who lived to pass it down. Now for the traps, Bill says, moving to the river's edge. The traps themselves are brutal in their efficiency, made of forged iron weighing around 5 pounds each with powerful spring mechanisms and steel jaws. They're designed to catch a beaver by the leg and hold it until the trapper returns. Usually we'd set these underwater, Bill explains, wading into the shallows. Beaver swims up, triggered by the bait, steps on the pan and snap. He demonstrates, setting the trigger mechanism with practiced ease. But with the river this high, we adapt. Instead of submerging the trap, Bill finds a small channel where beavers might travel between their lodge and feeding areas. He carefully positions the trap there, covering it with leaves and mud until it's nearly invisible. We secure it with a stake, he continues, hammering a length of wood into the ground and attaching a chain from the trap. Otherwise, beaver drags it into deep water and drowns before we get back. You might be thinking, isn't drowning the beaver the point? Actually, no. A drowned beaver's fur soaks up water, making the pelt harder to preserve. Trappers preferred to find the animal alive when possible, which, meant they had to kill it themselves. Mountain men weren't sentimental about this stuff. It was business, pure and simple. Now the bait, Bill says, taking a small amount of the foul-smelling paste and smearing it on a stick, which he positions near the trap. Beaver smells this, gets curious, steps right in the trap. You help Bill set 4 more traps along the river, learning the technique as you go. It's precise work, requiring attention to detail and knowledge of beaver behaviour. We'll check these at dawn tomorrow, Bill says as you finish the last one. Now we need shelter. The sky has clouded over during your work, the temperature dropping noticeably. In the mountains, weather changes faster than your Instagram feed. Looks like snow, you observe, eyeing the grey mass of clouds. Bill nods. Before nightfall, need to get a proper shelter up. Not like the basic bedrolls under pine boughs from last night. With snow coming, exposure becomes your biggest threat. What kind of shelter, you ask? Wiki up, Bill answers. Simple, effective. I spent some time with a wilderness survival expert learning about frontier shelters. Mountain men borrowed heavily from Native Americans, he told me. The wickiup was basically a small dome-shaped structure made with a framework of poles covered with brush, bark, or hides. You spend the next 2 hours gathering materials, cutting saplings for the frame, collecting pine boughs, stripping bark from deadfall. The work is hard, but warms you against the increasingly bitter wind. Bill directs the construction with few words, showing rather than telling how to bend and secure the saplings to create a dome about 5 feet high and 8 feet across. Big enough for 2 men and a small fire, he says, stepping back to assess the frame. Now cover it. You layer pine boughs over the structure, starting from the bottom and working up, creating overlapping rows like shingles to shed water, or in this case, snow. By the time you finish, fat white flakes are already beginning to fall. The forest around you quiets, sound dampened by the snowfall. The river continues its rush, but everything else seems to hold its breath. Get firewood, Bill orders, dry as you can find, under fallen logs, inside hollow trees. You scavenge while Bill creates a small fire pit inside the wickiup, carefully clearing a space and surrounding it with river rocks. As darkness falls, you crawl into the shelter with an armload of the driest wood you could find. Bill has a small fire already catching, the smoke rising to a hole he's left at the top of the structure. Not too big, he warns, just enough for warmth. Too much smoke inside will blind us. The small space warms quickly, though smoke does sting your eyes despite Bill's careful fire management. You sit with your back against the curved wall, watching the snow fall through the smoke hole above. Will the traps still work in the snow? You ask. Bill nods. Beaver don't care about snow. They keep working. So do we. He pulls out some jerky from his possible bag, hands you a piece. It's hard as wood, tasting of salt and smoke. You have to suck on it for several minutes before it's soft enough to chew, but it's food, and out here, that's all that matters. Tomorrow, Bill says between bites, we check traps at first light, then move downstream, set more. How many beaver do we need, you ask? For it to be worth all this? Bill considers the question. 30, 40 prime pelts would make for a good season. That's about all we can carry anyway. 40 beaver pelts at roughly $5 each. $200, equivalent to over $6,000 today. Not bad for a few months' work, if you survive. What about the Blackfeet, you ask, the morning's encounter still fresh in your mind? Bill shrugs. We keep watch. We move quick. We don't stay in one place too long. The snow falls heavier now, visible through the smoke hole as swirling white against black. Inside your rough shelter, the small fire casts dancing shadows on the walls. Despite the discomfort, the smoke, the hard ground, the persistent cold touching any body part, not directly facing the flames. There's a primitive satisfaction to the moment. You've made it through another day in a place that doesn't care if you live or die. Bill, you say after a long silence, how long have you been doing this? The older man stares into the small fire. 15 winters, he finally answers. Started when St. Louis was barely more than a trading post. What keeps you coming back, you ask? You gesture at the wilderness beyond your shelter walls. Bill doesn't answer immediately. When he does, his voice is quiet. Out here, a man knows exactly where he stands. Nature don't lie to you, don't cheat you, try to kill you, sure, but it's honest about it. He pokes at the fire with a stick. Cities are full of smiling men who'd slit your throat for $1. At least out here you see the knife coming. The mountain men weren't just skilled survivors. They were people choosing a brutal freedom over what they saw as a dishonest civilization. Something to think about while you're lying in your comfortable, safe, modern bed. The fire pops, sending a spark onto your leg. You brush it away, feeling the cold creep back in as the flames dwindle. Get some sleep, Bill says. Dawn comes early and the beaver won't wait. You settle onto your bedroll, using your pack as a pillow. Outside, the wind picks up, whistling through the trees. Snow patters gently on the pine boughs covering your shelter. Despite the hard ground beneath you, exhaustion pulls at your limbs. The last thing you see before closing your eyes is Bill, still sitting up, knife in one hand, staring at the smoke hole above as if expecting something to come through it at any moment. And you realise he probably is. Because in the wilderness of 1831, survival wasn't just a skill, it was everything. Morning comes with the kind of cold that makes your bones ache. You wake to the sound of Bill stirring the fire back to life, the small flames casting just enough light to see his frost-bearded face in the pre-dawn darkness. Outside, snow has blanketed the world, 6 inches at least, transforming the forest into something alien and silent. Trap line, Bill grunts, handing you a piece of jerky for breakfast. Eat while we move. Your body protests as you roll up from the ground. Everything hurts. Your back from sleeping on stone. Your hands from yesterday's work. Your feet from miles of mountain hiking in boots that still haven't broken in properly. This is what they don't put in the adventure books. The constant grinding discomfort of frontier life. What if the traps are buried in snow, you ask, voice rough from smoke and sleep. Bill gives you a look that clearly says he thinks you're an idiot. We find 'em, right. Of course, you crawl out of the wiki-up into a world transformed. The snow catches the first grey light of dawn, soft blue shadows stretching across untouched white. It would be beautiful if you weren't about to wade through it. Stay in my tracks, Bill orders, stepping out first, breaking trail through the fresh powder. You follow, grateful for the slightly easier path he creates. The snow is deeper than it looked, coming halfway up your shins with each step. Within minutes your feet are numb and your pants are soaked to the knee. Remind me why we can't just wait for the snow to melt, you mutter. Bill doesn't even turn around. 'Cause we'll starve before spring, boy. Fair point. Mountain men didn't have the luxury of sick days or weather delays. Nature doesn't care about your comfort. Either you adapt or you die. The river looks different in morning light, still dangerous, but the snow along its banks softens its appearance. Bill leads you to the first trap, memory guiding him more than any visible markers. Here, he says, stopping at what looks like just another patch of snow-covered ground. He kneels, brushes away the white powder, and reveals the chain leading to the trap. Gives it a tug. Resistance. Got something, he says, a rare hint of satisfaction in his voice. He pulls steadily on the chain, drawing up the trap from beneath a layer of wet leaves and mud. And there it is. A large beaver. Leg caught in the steel jaws, very much dead. Drowned itself, Bill observes, examining the animal. Pulled the trap into deeper water despite the stake. The beaver is bigger than you expected, maybe 30 pounds, with rich dark fur and that iconic flat tail. Its small front paws look almost human, like tiny hands. Something about that makes this harder to look at than you anticipated. Don't go soft, Bill warns, catching your expression. Ain't a pet. I know, you say quickly, just bigger than I thought. Bill nods. Good size, prime pelt. He reaches for his knife, not the small one he keeps in his belt, but a larger one from his pack. Now you learn the next part. The next part, it turns out, is skinning the beaver. Bill works with practiced efficiency, making an initial cut around the animal's hind legs, then essentially pulling the hide off like a wet sock, turning it inside out as he goes. Keep the fur side in, he instructs as you watch. Keeps it clean, makes it easier to flesh later. The smell is something, a mix of wet animal, river mud, and something musky that must be uniquely beaver. Not pleasant, but you're starting to realise that pleasant smells are a luxury of civilization. What about the meat, you ask as Bill finishes removing the pelt. Edible, Bill says. Some parts better than others. We'll take the tail and the back legs. Rest goes back to the forest. Wait, beaver tail is edible? People eat the tail. Bill actually cracks something close to a smile, mostly fat. Good eating in winter. I looked this up. Beaver tail was considered a delicacy among mountain men and native tribes. It's almost entirely fat, which made it incredibly valuable in an environment where calories meant survival. Trappers would roast it over fire until the scaly outer part could be peeled off, revealing the fatty tissue inside. With the beaver processed, Bill resets the trap and moves on to the next location. You follow, now carrying one wet beaver pelt and a few pounds of meat wrapped in a piece of oilcloth. The second trap is empty, though clearly disturbed. Something set it off, Bill mutters, examining the mechanism. Could have been anything. Branch in the current, muskrat, even a fish. He resets it carefully, using more of the caster bait to refresh the scent. The third trap holds another beaver, smaller than the first, but still a good size. This one is alive. Step back, Bill warns as you approach. The beaver thrashes when it sees you, teeth bared, trying to drag itself and the trap toward the water. Those teeth, I read that beaver incisors can be up to 20 centimeters long. Basically nature's chisels. They can fell a 12-inch diameter tree in under an hour. Imagine what they could do to your leg. Bill approaches the animal from behind, and with a single precise blow of a short club he keeps in his belt, dispatches it. The efficiency is almost merciful, no prolonged suffering. Now you do the skinning, he says, stepping back. You hesitate, knife in hand. I don't want to mess up the pelt. You will, Bill says flatly. Only way to learn is to ruin a few. Better to ruin this small one than a prime pelt later. So you kneel in the snow and try to mimic what you saw Bill do earlier. Your cuts are hesitant, your hands clumsy in the cold. The hide doesn't separate as easily as it did when Bill did it. You're cutting too deep, he corrects, just through the skin, not into the meat. You adjust, finding the right pressure. It's disturbingly intimate work, this separation of skin from flesh. By the time you finish, your hands are bloody to the wrists and the pelt is, well, not as neat as Bill's, but intact. It'll do, Bill says, which from him is practically a standing ovation. The fourth and fifth traps are empty, though Bill seems unsurprised. 1 in 3 is good odds, he explains as you hike back to camp. 2 in 5 is excellent. At the wiki-up, Bill shows you the next step in processing the pelts. Fleshing, he explains, taking the first pelt and spreading it on a smooth log he's positioned near the fire. The hide is inside out, the fur protected, the skin side, still with bits of fat and membrane attached, facing up. He takes a specialized tool from his pack, a dull curved blade attached to a handle. Fleshing knife, he explains, too sharp and you'll cut through the hide. You watch as he scrapes the skin side, removing every last bit of fat and tissue. Clean hide takes the tanning better, he explains. Any flesh left will rot, ruin the pelt. After demonstrating on the first beaver, he hands you the tool. Your turn. Your attempts are slow, too cautious at first, then too aggressive. Bill adjusts your technique with gruff instructions. By the time you finish the second pelt, your arms ache, but the hide is clean. Now we stretch them, Bill says. He produces several metal hoops from his pack, circular frames about 2 feet in diameter. In the old days, we'd make these from willow branches, he explains. These travel better. The wet pelts are stretched over the hoops, the edges secured with small wooden pins pushed through the skin into the frame. When finished, they look like furry tambourines. They'll dry by tomorrow, Bill says. Then we pack them and move on. That's it? You ask. Bill shakes his head. That's just the start. At Rendezvous, we'll sell these to the company men. They'll send them east, where they'll be properly tanned and made into hats. The famous beaver hats, the entire reason for your presence in this wilderness. The fashion that drove men to the edges of the known world, risking death daily. What about the meat, you ask, nodding to the beaver parts you brought back. Stew, Bill says, but first we need to do something about those clothes of yours. You look down at your pants, soaked from the snow and now starting to freeze as the temperature drops again. Your once fine St. Louis garments were never meant for this life. What's wrong with my clothes? Bill snorts. Cotton kills, boy. Gets wet, stays wet, you freeze to death. Need something that works in this country. Like what? Buckskin, Bill says simply, and lucky for you, I got a hide nearly ready. From his pack, Bill pulls a rolled deer hide, not a pelt like the beaver. This has clearly been through some kind of tanning process already. Shot a small buck 3 days before I found you, he explains. Been working this hide at night while you sleep. Wait, you haven't been sleeping? No wonder he's always awake before you. Bill shrugs. Sleep when necessary. This was more important. Can't have you dying from wet clothes. There's a weird kind of care in his gruffness. He might not like you much, but he's invested in keeping you alive. Bill spreads the hide on the ground outside the wiki up. The snow has stopped, though the air remains frigid. First step in making buckskin is getting a fresh hide, he explains. Then you do the same as with the beaver. Flesh it, get all the meat and fat off. The hide, he shows you, is clean, the hair already removed, leaving just the skin. Had to scrape the hair off, he explains. Different from beaver, we want the fur on those, but for buckskin, we want just the leather. One of the things people don't think about with historical clothing is that there weren't really waterproof fabrics. Wool stayed warm even when wet, but got heavy. Buckskin was lightweight and good at blocking wind, but had other quirks. Mountain men had to know what worked for each condition. Now comes the important part, Bill says, picking up a small wooden bowl he's had sitting by the fire. Inside is a greyish mass that looks like, oh God. Is that, you start, already knowing the answer? Brains, Bill confirms. From the deer, every animal has just enough brains to tan its own hide. That's not just a mountain man saying, it's actually true for most animals. A deer's brain has enough oils and lecithin to adequately tan its own hide. Nature's perfect recycling system. You watch, fascinated and slightly nauseated, as Bill mixes the brains with warm water into a paste. He works this mixture deep into the hide, covering every inch of the surface. Brain oils break down the fibres, he explains as he works. Makes the hide soft, supple, otherwise it dries hard as a board. The smell is distinctive. Not as bad as you feared, but definitely not something you'd want as a cologne. This stays on overnight, Bill says, rolling up the hide with the brain mixture inside. Tomorrow we'll wash it and start working it. That night you sleep better, despite the cold and the hard ground. Exhaustion is winning out over discomfort. You dream of beaver teeth and men wearing hides, of rivers rushing with gold coins instead of water. You wake to Bill's voice. Up, got work to do. The morning is clear, the sun rising in a cloudless sky that promises at least temporary better weather. After a breakfast of beaver tail, which is actually surprisingly good, rich and fatty like bone marrow, Bill retrieves the deer hide. Now we wash out the brains, he says, taking the hide to the river's edge. You help him rinse the hide thoroughly in the cold water. The brain mixture washes away, leaving the hide lighter in colour. Next part is the real work, Bill says, bringing the wet hide back to camp. For the next 2 hours you watch and then help as Bill demonstrates the process of softening the hide. This involves stretching, pulling and working every inch of the material as it dries. Keep it moving, Bill instructs. If it dries stiff, all that brain work was for nothing. You take turns pulling the hide over a smooth log, using your body weight to create tension, then working it with your hands, massaging the fibres. It's exhausting physical labour, the kind that makes your shoulders burn and fingers cramp. In the old days, Bill says between pulls, native women would chew the hide to soften it. Chew it? You repeat, horrified. Bill nods. Hours of chewing. Every inch makes for the softest buckskin. You look down at the hide in your hands with newfound appreciation. Think I'll stick with this method. By midday, the hide has transformed from a stiff, raw material to something soft and flexible, almost like cloth but stronger. The colour has changed too to a soft, yellowish tan. Not done yet, Bill says, just as you think the work might be finished. Most important step left, which is smoking, Bill says. Raw tanned hide gets wet. It stiffens right back up. Smoking fixes that. Bill constructs a small specialised fire pit a short distance from your wickiup. It's essentially a hole in the ground with a mound built up around it. Needs smoke, not flame, he explains, filling the pit with rotten wood and damp, punky logs that he's collected from the forest floor. I actually tried to find exactly what punky wood is. It refers to wood that's partially decomposed, soft and spongy from fungal activity. It smoulders rather than burns with flame, producing lots of thick smoke, perfect for this application. With the smoke-producing fire ready, Bill sews the buckskin into a rough bag shape with sinew, thin, strong fibres from animal tendons that serve as thread. He leaves one end open. Now we let the smoke do its work, he says, setting up a tripod of sticks over the fire pit. He hangs the buckskin bag from this frame, the open end at the bottom positioned over the smoking pit. He places stones around the bottom edge to hold it in place and trap the smoke inside. Smoke goes in, can't get out, he explains. Penetrates every fibre. The rich, thick smoke billows up into the buckskin bag, inflating it like a primitive balloon. The smell is earthy and strong, not unpleasant but pervasive. You know instinctively that this smell will never fully leave the hide. How long does this take, you ask? Hours, Bill says. Sometimes a day, depends on the hide. The smoke. While the buckskin smokes, Bill turns his attention to the beaver pelts still drying on their hoops. Another day for these, he assesses, touching one carefully. Then we pack them for travel. The rhythm of mountain life becomes clearer to you now. Everything has a process, a timing that can't be rushed. Nature sets the schedule and humans adapt. The snow, the river, the animals, the sun all dictate what can be done and when. Late in the afternoon, Bill checks the smoking buckskin. Satisfied with the colour, now a rich golden brown, he removes it from the smoke frame. Done, he announces, laying it out. Now we can make you something useful. The material has transformed again, still soft and flexible, but now with that distinctive smoky colour and scent that marks real buckskin. Bill cuts into it with his knife, working without any pattern or template. Just knowledge carried in his hands from years of necessity. He cuts a simple shirt shape, really more of a pullover, and then leggings that can be tied to a belt. Try these, he says, handing you the rough-cut buckskin pieces, better than what you've got. You slip the buckskin shirt over your cotton one. Immediately you feel the difference. It blocks the wind completely, something your city clothes never managed. The leggings, too, when tied over your wet pants, provide immediate relief from the biting cold. This is amazing, you admit, moving around to test the fit. Ain't pretty, Bill acknowledges, but it'll keep you alive. It's strange to wear something so primitive, yet undeniably practical. No buttons, no fancy stitching, no fashionable cut. Just function. Your fine St. Louis clothes now seem ridiculous in comparison, like trying to survive the wilderness in a tuxedo. What makes buckskin so good? You ask, genuinely curious now. Bill considers for a moment, not a man used to explaining things that are obvious to him. Breathes, he finally says. Keeps wind out, but sweat can escape. Dries quick if it gets wet. Strong, won't tear in brush. Quiet, won't make noise when you're hunting. He touches the material at your shoulder, and with the smoking, it stays soft even after getting wet. You're beginning to understand that mountain men weren't just tough, they were practical scientists in their own way. Everything they did had a reason, refined through generations of trial and deadly error. As evening approaches, you help Bill prepare another meal, this time a stew made from the beaver meat, enhanced with a few dried roots and herbs from his possible bag. It's rich and gamey, but hot and filling. Tomorrow we check the traps again, Bill says, as darkness falls. Then we move downstream. Need to set more. How far do we go, you ask? Until we find good beaver sign or hit Blackfeet territory, Bill answers. Then we turn and work back upstream. The life of constant movement. No home except what you carry or build each night. That buckskin will be your second skin out here, Bill adds, nodding at your new clothing. Treat it right. It'll last years. You look down at the rough garment, already feeling attached to it. This isn't just clothing, it's a tangible symbol of adaptation, of leaving behind the city boy and becoming something new. I've seen men die from the simplest things out here, Bill says, his voice low as he stares into the small fire. Not the bears or the Indians that get most, it's the little things. Wrong clothes, wet feet, not enough food stored, pride, you echo. Bill nods. Too proud to admit they don't know something? Too proud to change? He gestures at your buckskin shirt. City men come out here thinking they know better than those who've lived it. Nature sorts that thinking out real quick. The fire crackles in the silence that follows. Outside, an owl calls into the night. The temperature is dropping fast with the darkness, stars appearing in brilliant clusters through the smoke hole of your shelter. Get some sleep, Bill finally says. Dawn comes early. Always dawn. Always more work. The endless cycle of survival. You settle onto your bedroll, the ground no softer than before, but somehow your body less resistant to it, adapting like the buckskin, becoming something different with each passing day. Through half-closed eyes, you watch Bill cleaning his knife meticulously before sleep. Always prepared. Always thinking ahead to the next need, the next threat. Bill, you murmur, sleep already pulling at you. Thanks for the buckskin. He doesn't look up from his knife. Ain't kindness, just practical. But you're starting to understand that out here, keeping someone alive is the greatest kindness possible. As you drift towards sleep, you run your fingers over the soft buckskin of your new shirt, from deer to clothing in a matter of days, from living animal to survival tool through an ancient process that no factory could improve upon. In the city, you never thought about where things came from, what it took to make them. Out here, everything has a visible cost. Everything connects directly to life or death. Your last thought before sleep claims you is a strange realization. For the first time since arriving in this brutal wilderness, you feel something close to belonging. Not comfort, never that, but purpose, understanding. And the first faint echo of the knowledge that has kept mountain men alive in a land that wants them dead. Dawn brings a new sound that makes your blood run cold, cracking, shifting, the deep, ominous groan of ice moving against ice. Bill is already up, standing at the edge of your camp, looking toward the river with an expression you've learned to dread. What's happening, you ask, rolling stiffly out of your bedroll, the new buckskin clothing having kept you noticeably warmer through the night. Spring melt coming down from the high country, Bill says, nodding toward the sound. Rivers rising. You join him at the edge of the clearing. The river that yesterday was merely threatening is now genuinely terrifying. Swollen with snowmelt, it's at least 2 feet higher than the day before. The current has accelerated, carrying chunks of ice and entire trees ripped from upstream banks. "What about the traps?" you ask, already knowing the answer. Bill spits. "Gone, or soon will be." "All of them?" The dismay in your voice is clear. 2 days of work and valuable equipment just lost. "Part of the cost," Bill shrugs, though you can see the calculation happening behind his eyes. Traps were expensive, about $2 to $3 each in 1831. That's $60–90 in today's money each, and you'd set 5. "We need to cross," Bill says, after a long moment of staring at the water. You look at him like he's lost his mind. "Cross? That?" The river is at least 40 yards wide, running fast and violent, carrying debris that could easily kill a man. Swimming is suicide. "Need to check the other bank," Bill explains. "This side's getting trapped out, and we need to get ahead of that water. It'll flood this whole bottom by tomorrow." You stare at the raging water. How exactly are we supposed to cross that? For the first time since you've met him, Bill almost smiles. "We build a boat." "A boat," you repeat flatly. "Out here. With what?" Bill gestures to the forest around you. "With that, like the old-timers did." Mountain men were masters of improvisation. If they needed something, they made it from whatever was available. This is probably the most important survival skill of all. Not specific techniques, but the mindset that looks at a problem and figures out a solution using only what's at hand. "What kind of boat?" you ask, already mentally cataloguing the tools you have between you. "Bull boat," Bill answers. "Simple. Works. Used to be made with buffalo hide, but deer'll do in a pinch." You follow Bill back to your camp, where he dumps out his pack and begins sorting through his possessions. He pulls out an axe head, not mounted on a handle, just the metal head to save weight, and a coil of rawhide cord. "First, we need the right wood," he says, lashing the axe head to a stout branch he cuts with his knife. Primitive, but effective. The next 2 hours are spent gathering materials. Bill sends you to cut willow branches, long, flexible ones at least an inch thick at the base. Meanwhile, he heads deeper into the forest, returning with several straight pine saplings about 2 inches in diameter. "Willows for the frame, pine for support," he explains, dropping his load at the camp. "I checked with a wilderness survival instructor about bull boats. They were incredibly practical," he told me. "The design was borrowed from Native American craft, particularly Plains tribes, essentially a round coracle made with a wooden framework covered in hide. They weren't meant for long journeys, just crossing rivers or temporary use." Under Bill's direction, you help bend the willow branches into a rough circle about 7 feet in diameter. The ends are overlapped and lashed together with rawhide. More willows are bent across this circle, creating a basket-like framework. "Now the cross braces," Bill says, cutting the pine saplings to the right length and lashing them across the willow frame for rigidity. The work is faster with 2 people, one holding while the other ties. By midday, you have a sturdy circular frame that looks like an enormous shallow basket. "Now for the covering," Bill says, opening his pack again. He pulls out another deer hide, larger than the one used for your buckskin clothing and still with the hair on. "Always carry a spare hide," he explains, seeing your surprise. "Too useful to be without." The hide is still somewhat stiff but workable. Bill shows you how to stretch it over the frame, hair side down. Want the smooth side out, he explains. Less drag in the water. The hide barely covers the frame, its edges just reaching around to the bottom. Bill uses an awl to punch holes along the edge of the hide, then threads raw hide through, lashing it tightly to the frame. Needs to be waterproof, he explains, working methodically around the circle. Any gap and we sink. Once the hide is secured, Bill produces a small pot of rendered animal fat from his pack. Bear grease, he says, makes it waterproof. Together, you coat the outer surface of the bull boat with the grease, paying special attention to the seams where the hide is lashed to the frame. Ain't pretty, Bill acknowledges when you finish, but it'll float. The boat looks primitive, almost comically so. A round, shallow basin about 7 feet across and maybe 2 feet deep. It resembles nothing so much as a giant hide-covered saucer. How do we steer it, you ask, circling the craft skeptically. You don't, exactly, Bill admits. More like Monty with what? I don't see any oars. Bill picks up a straight branch about 5 feet long, with this or your hands if needed. You look from the stick to the raging river and back again. You can't be serious. Dead serious, Bill says. Bull boats have crossed every river in the West. Not elegant, but they work. You help Bill carry the bull boat to the river's edge. Up close, the water is even more intimidating. Brown with silt, carrying all manner of debris, it moves with a power that makes your knees weak. We'll put in above that bend, Bill says, pointing upstream. Current will push us across and down. We aim to land there. He points to a spot on the far bank about a 1/4 mile downstream. What about our gear, you ask? Most stays here, Bill says. We cross, scout the other side, then come back for it. Boat can't hold everything. That makes you feel marginally better. At least when this thing sinks, you won't lose everything you own. Bill places his rifle, powder horn, and possible bag in the centre of the bull boat, covering them with an oilcloth. You do the same with your weapon. If it goes over, let it go, Bill instructs seriously. Gear can be replaced. You can't. With everything secured, Bill demonstrates how to get into the craft. It's trickier than it looks. The bull boat has no keel, nothing to keep it stable or upright. It shifts and wobbles with every movement. Low centre of gravity, Bill advises, kneeling in the bottom rather than sitting. Keep weight in the middle. You follow his example, kneeling opposite him in the round craft. Even with just the two of you and minimal gear, the bull boat sits low in the water, its rim only about 6 inches above the surface. Ready? Bill asks, using the stick to push away from the bank. No, not even remotely, but you nod anyway. The current grabs the bull boat immediately, spinning it like a leaf in a gutter. Bill digs his stick into the water, attempting to guide your direction more than actually propel the craft. Use your stick, he shouts over the rush of water. Other side. You plunge your branch into the river, feeling the incredible force of the current try to tear it from your grasp. Together, you and Bill perform an awkward paddling dance, each trying to counter the spin of the boat while also angling it toward the far shore. Water splashes over the edge with every wave and movement, beginning to pool at your knees. The bull boat is floating, but just barely. Keep bailing, Bill orders, and you realise he's been using his free hand to scoop water out of the boat. You do the same, alternating between paddling and bailing as the river carries you downstream at alarming speed. The banks blur past, trees and rocks mere smears of colour in your peripheral vision. Something slams into the side of your craft, a submerged log or rock, sending it into a frenzied spin. Water pours in over one side. Shift your weight, Bill barks, already moving to the high side. You scramble to follow, nearly capsizing the boat in the opposite direction before finding a precarious balance. More water has entered, now nearly covering the bottom completely. Bail faster. You abandon any pretense of steering, focusing entirely on scooping water out as quickly as possible. Your arms burn with the effort, hands numb from the frigid river. The far bank is approaching fast, too fast. At your current speed, you'll slam into it rather than gently beach. Back paddle, Bill shouts, driving his stick into the water against the direction of travel. You follow suit, straining against the current. The bullboat slows marginally, still spinning but with slightly less velocity. 50 yards from shore, you hit another obstacle. This time, the impact is enough to throw you forward onto your hands and knees, sending a wave of water into the craft. "We're going over," Bill yells, already grabbing his rifle and possible bag. The bullboat tilts dangerously, one edge dipping below the surface. Water pours in. In seconds, you're floating in a hide bathtub filled with river water. "Abandon," Bill commands, rolling over the side into the river. You clutch your rifle and follow, the shocking cold of the water stealing your breath. The current immediately grabs you, pulling you downstream as the waterlogged bullboat capsizes completely behind you. The river is deep, over your head in places, forcing you to swim one-armed while keeping your rifle above water. The current tosses you like a toy, spinning you so that you lose all sense of direction. A branch slams into your back, knocking what little air remains from your lungs. You gasp, swallowing water, panic rising as your head goes under. Then your feet hit something solid, a sandbar. You push up, breaking the surface, coughing and sputtering. The water here is only chest deep, allowing you to wade rather than swim. "This way," Bill's voice calls from ahead. You spot him closer to shore, fighting through waist-deep water toward a small cove where the current slackens. You follow, each step a battle against the flow, trying to sweep your feet out from under you. Finally, you stagger onto the shore, collapsing on the rocky bank. Your rifle, miraculously, is still in your grasp, though thoroughly soaked. Your powder will be useless until dried. "Boat's gone," Bill states the obvious, watching the remains of your craft disappear around a bend downstream. "That was your plan," you gasp when you can speak again. "That death trap?" Bill shrugs, already wringing water from his buckskin shirt. "Got us across, didn't it?" You want to argue, but he's not wrong. Despite the terrifying journey and ultimate destruction of the bullboat, you have indeed reached the far shore. "Would have worked better in calmer water," Bill admits. "But we didn't have calm water. That's the reality of frontier life right there. You use what you have, not what you wish you had. Perfect solutions are a luxury of civilization. The next hour is spent recovering, drying your weapons as best you can, wringing out clothes and assessing your situation. The buckskin clothing, though soaked, has performed surprisingly well. It hasn't become heavy and cumbersome like wool or cotton would. "We'll need fire," Bill decides, looking at the western sky where clouds are gathering again, temperatures dropping. You help gather wood, your hands still shaking from cold and adrenaline. Bill uses the flint and steel from his possible bag, thankfully waterproofed in oilcloth, to spark a flame. Within minutes, a small fire burns on the shore. "Strip," Bill orders, already removing his clothes to dry them by the fire. In the city, you die of embarrassment. Out here, you comply without hesitation. Modesty means nothing compared to avoiding freezing to death in wet clothing. As your clothes steam by the fire, Bill surveys the new territory you've reached. The far bank is steeper, more wooded, with less evidence of human presence. "Better trapping here," he observes, scanning the shoreline. See those trees? He points to several aspens and cottonwoods with trunks gnawed at the base. Beaver sign, fresh, good-size colony nearby. Despite the harrowing river crossing, you feel a surge of something like excitement. This is why you came west, after all. For opportunity, for beaver, for profit. How do we get back, you ask, suddenly remembering all your gear on the other shore. We don't, Bill says simply. Not today, maybe not for weeks. You stare at him. But our supplies... Trap here first, Bill cuts you off. Work this bank until we have enough pelts to make the crossing worthwhile. River might be lower by then. And if it's not, Bill shrugs. Build another boat, better one, with more time. The casual acceptance of this setback is perhaps the most important lesson you've learned so far. Plans change, nature intervenes, adapt or die. Can we build a proper shelter, you ask, eyeing the darkening sky. Bill nods. Need to move away from the river first. Find higher ground before this bank floods too. Once your clothes are merely damp rather than soaking, you dress and help Bill extinguish the fire. With minimal gear and no food except Bill's small emergency rations, you follow him up a game trail leading away from the river. Half a mile inland, the terrain rises to a small ridge covered with pines. Bill chooses a spot on the leeward side, protected from the prevailing wind. Here, he decides. Good drainage, shelter from weather, close enough to water, but safe from flooding. The shelter you build is more substantial than the previous night's wickie-up. With more time and the immediate threat of the river receding, Bill shows you how to construct a lean-to using fallen timber for the main support and pine boughs for the roof and sides. Angled to reflect fire heat, he explains, building a long, narrow fire pit parallel to the open side of the shelter. By nightfall, you have a surprisingly comfortable camp established. The lean-to is large enough for both of you to stretch out, with the fire providing a wall of heat that reflects off the sloped roof. Tomorrow we make new traps, Bill says as darkness falls. Can't replace the iron ones, but we can make deadfalls. Deadfalls, you ask. Log traps. Primitive, but they work. Indians used them before white men brought steel. The thought of starting from scratch is daunting, but there's also a strange pride in the knowledge that you can, that you're not helpless without manufactured tools, with no food except a small piece of jerky each from Bill's emergency supply. You go to bed hungry, but the shelter is warm, the fire crackling comfortingly, and exhaustion soon pulls you towards sleep. Bill, you say as your eyes grow heavy. Why do mountain men use bull boats instead of, I don't know, real boats, canoes or something? Bill shifts in his bedroll. Wait, he answers simply. Can't carry a canoe over mountains. Bull boat you build when needed. Use it. Leave it. Build another somewhere else. The perfect tool for men who travel light and adapt to their surroundings, rather than trying to bring civilization with them. Would have worked better if the river wasn't flooding, you observe drowsily. Usually does, Bill agrees, but usually gets men killed out here. As you drift towards sleep, you realize that's perhaps the most important lesson of the day. There is no usually in the wilderness. No guarantees, just skills, judgment, and the willingness to risk everything on a hide-covered frame of sticks when the river needs crossing. The sound of the rushing water follows you into your dreams, where you're endlessly spinning in a bullboat that never quite sinks and never reaches shore, always in between, always at the mercy of forces beyond your control, just like real life on the frontier. Morning comes with the distant rumble of thunder. Your body is a catalogue of complaints, muscles stiff from yesterday's swim, skin chafed from damp buckskin, stomach hollow with hunger, but you're alive, which counts for something out here. Bill is already up, as usual, standing at the edge of the ridge, staring out at the landscape with practiced eyes. Storm coming, he says as you join him. 2, maybe 3 hours away. You scan the horizon. The sky looks mostly clear to you, with just a faint darkening to the west. How can you tell? Birds, he says, pointing to a flock moving eastward. They know. Victorian fashion was so extreme that women's corsets could reduce their waist size by up to 10 inches. The average woman's natural waist was 27 to 29 inches, but society celebrated the ideal 18-inch waist, all while doctors raised concerns about breathing difficulties and circulation problems. If you enjoy these stories, hit subscribe. Also, drop your location in the comments. I'm always curious where everyone's listening from. We're heading to Victorian England in a minute. First though, get comfortable. Seriously, take a second, adjust whatever needs adjusting. You're not going to want to move once we start. The pressure around your ribs is the first thing you notice. Even before opening your eyes, you can feel it, like a giant hand squeezing your torso. Welcome to morning as a Victorian woman in 1870. You blink awake in a modest bedroom, lying on a horsehair mattress that crinkles when you shift. The room is cold, damn cold actually. The coal fire died hours ago and frost patterns decorate the inside of your window panes. Unlike your cozy blanket right now, the thin wool coverings barely trap any heat. Time to rise, ma'am. Your lady's maid, Agnes, has entered silently. She's already been up for hours, lighting fires, preparing your clothes, heating water. She looks exhausted, but that's not your concern right now. You have your own battle ahead. Is it really necessary today, you ask, eyeing the contraption Agnes is laying out on the dressing table. I'm only visiting Mother. Agnes gives you that look, the one that says, we have this conversation every morning. Your mother would be the first to notice if you weren't properly dressed, ma'am, she replies diplomatically. She's right, your mother would definitely notice and comment, and then tell everyone else she knows. The thought makes your stomach clench. The corset lies there like an instrument of torture, which honestly it basically is. Whalebone and steel designed to force your body into an impossible shape. Last week you heard about a woman whose corset was so tight that when she died they found her ribs had grown around it. Like a tree growing around a fence. Your body literally reshaping itself to accommodate this cage. Shall we begin? Agnes asks. First comes the chemise, a thin cotton undergarment that serves as a barrier between your skin and the corset. Then cotton drawers tied at the waist. Already you're warmer. Silver linings, I guess. Agnes holds the corset up against your torso. It's a well-made piece. Custom fitted last year when you still had dreams of achieving an 18-inch waist. You're hovering around 20 inches now, which your husband has deemed acceptable. How generous of him. Deep breath, ma'am, Agnes warns. You inhale as much as possible, knowing that soon breathing deeply won't be an option. Agnes wraps the corset around your torso and begins the lacing process. The first few tugs are manageable, just a gentle pressure, but as Agnes works her way down, each pull becomes more restrictive. Your ribs compress, your lungs can't fully expand, your internal organs are literally shifting position. A bit tighter, ma'am. The blue dress needs a smaller waist. Just a bit more, you gasp. Agnes braces her foot against the bedpost for leverage, pulling the laces with all her strength. You grip the bedpost, knuckles white. Jesus, you mutter under your breath. How is this fashion? Language, ma'am, Agnes reminds you, but there's sympathy in her voice. She's not immune. She wears a corset too, though a cheaper, less restrictive version. The pressure required for your waist would prevent her from completing her physically demanding work. With a final tug, Agnes ties off the laces. You try to breathe and find you can only take shallow sips of air. Your lower ribs are compressed almost to meeting in the middle. There now. Beautiful, Agnes says, steering you toward the mirror. The transformation is undeniable. Your waist is impossibly small, creating that coveted hourglass figure. But at what cost? You already feel lightheaded, and you haven't even gone downstairs yet. Dr. Harrison's warning echoes in your mind. These contraptions are slowly killing you, ladies, he'd said during your last visit for female troubles. Your mother had been scandalised, insisting he was being dramatic. But when he showed you those medical drawings, the way organs get crushed and displaced, you couldn't unsee it. The women in your circle dismiss such warnings. Men have always tried to control what we wear, your friend Elizabeth had said last week. First they want us in corsets, then they claim to want us out of them for our health. Make up your minds, gentlemen. You had laughed along, but privately wondered if maybe the doctors had a point. Your monthly courses had become irregular and painful since tightening your corset to please your husband, and that fainting spell at the Hendersons' dinner party last month, definitely from lack of oxygen. Now, for the petticoats, Agnes announces, holding up what looks like enough fabric to sail a small ship. Layer by layer, Agnes builds your silhouette. First, the cotton petticoat, then 2 more made of heavier material. Already, you're carrying several pounds of fabric, all hanging from your compressed waist. Your lower back begins to ache in protest. I was reading about this American woman, you tell Agnes as she works. Amelia Bloomer. She wears trousers under a shorter skirt. Can you imagine? Agnes looks scandalised. Trousers on a lady. What would the neighbours say? That's exactly what my husband said, you sigh. But think how much easier it would be to move, to breathe, to exist. Easier isn't always proper, Mum, Agnes says diplomatically, though you can see a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. Next comes your bustle, a metal cage that attaches at your lower back, creating that fashionable posterior shelf that men supposedly find attractive. It adds another pound of weight and makes sitting a strategic challenge. You'll spend the day perching on the edges of chairs or standing until your feet throb. The blue dress goes on last, a beautiful creation of silk and lace with 57 tiny buttons down the back that poor Agnes must fasten one by one. By the time she's done, your back is ramrod straight, your waist is cinched to painful proportions, and your lungs can only expand by about half their capacity. There, Agnes says with satisfaction, you look like a proper lady. You study your reflection. Yes, you've achieved the ideal Victorian silhouette. Tiny waist, ample bosom, wide hips. The dress is beautiful, but already spots dance before your eyes from shallow breathing. Your ribs send shooting pains with every movement. And you know that by evening the flesh under your corset will be raw and chafed, possibly bleeding in spots. Is beauty worth this? Agnes brings your jewellery next, a cameo brooch from your husband, earrings from your father, and a delicate gold chain. These small personal touches are the only parts of your appearance truly under your control. Oh, I almost forgot, Agnes says, retrieving a small bottle from your dressing table. Your mother sent this over. She says all the ladies are using it for a youthful complexion. You examine the bottle. Dr. Campbell's arsenic complexion wafers. Arsenic? You ask, alarmed. Isn't that poison? In large doses, ma'am, but these are perfectly safe in small amounts. The lady down the street has been taking them for months and her skin is like porcelain. You've heard the rumours, though. The woman 3 doors down who took similar wafers and ended up with tremors in her hands. The socialite who died suddenly after using arsenic powders for years. I think I'll pass for today, you say, setting the bottle aside. Agnes looks worried. Your mother will ask if you've tried them. Then let her ask. This small rebellion feels significant. You can't escape the corset. Not yet, anyway, but you can refuse to literally poison yourself for beauty. As Agnes styles your hair, you gaze out the window at the street below. A delivery boy races past on a bicycle, moving freely, breathing deeply. You feel a stab of envy so intense it takes you by surprise. Do you ever wonder what it would be like, you ask Agnes suddenly, to move through the world without all this? Agnes pauses, hairpin in hand. Sometimes, ma'am, when I see my brother run across a field or climb a tree, she lowers her voice. And sometimes at night, I loosen my corset when no one's looking, just to remember what it feels like to take a real breath. This confession creates an unexpected moment of solidarity between you, two women separated by class but united by the same physical restrictions. Maybe someday, you say, though you don't finish the thought. Agnes adds the final touches to your hair, a complex arrangement of curls and twists that you couldn't possibly reproduce on your own, another way you're dependent on others just to present yourself acceptably to society. Ready to go downstairs, Mum? You nod, though ready isn't quite the word. You're armoured, packaged, presented, but definitely not comfortable or free. You stand carefully, feeling the weight of the fabrics, the squeeze of the corset, the pinch of two small shoes. The day stretches before you, a series of restrictive spaces, limited movements, shallow breaths, and careful social performances. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. As you make your way toward the door, you catch sight of a pamphlet on your writing desk, something your husband's progressive cousin had slipped to you at last week's dinner party. The Rational Dress Society, the headline reads. You'd hidden it quickly, but the ideas inside have been haunting you. Could women really dress differently? Could you someday walk through the world without feeling like your body is in a cage? Agnes follows your gaze and quickly adjusts your skirt, drawing your attention away from the forbidden literature. Best not to dwell on such things, Ma'am, she says quietly. Some battles can't be won in a day. You take as deep a breath as your corset allows and prepare to descend the stairs. One careful step at a time, as befits a proper Victorian lady. The weight of expectations feels heavier than all your clothing combined. Breakfast is a painful affair, not the food itself. Cook has prepared a lovely spread of toast, eggs and kippers, but the actual process of eating while corseted is miserable. Your compressed stomach can only handle small bites, and even those sit uncomfortably. Your husband barely notices your discomfort. He's hidden behind his newspaper, occasionally making comments about politics or business that require no real response from you. This is probably a blessing. At least you don't have to make conversation while struggling to breathe. I'll be at the club until late, he announces, folding his paper. The Hendersons are coming for dinner tomorrow, so make sure you look presentable. The way his eyes flicker to your face makes his meaning clear. The Hendersons are influential, and Mrs. Henderson is known for her flawless complexion and fashionable appearance. You'll need to do better than just a corset tomorrow. After he leaves, you return to your dressing room where Agnes has laid out your beauty regimen. The array of bottles, pots and tools looks more like a chemist's laboratory than cosmetics. Shall we begin with the face treatments, Ma'am? Agnes asks. You nod, settling onto the stool before your vanity mirror. The woman who stares back at you is pale, not the fashionable porcelain pallor, but the sickly pallor of someone who rarely sees the sun. Dark circles rim your eyes from another night of uncomfortable sleep in your corset. Mrs. Henderson uses that new face cream, you muse. The one with... what is it called? Ammonia, ma'am, Agnes says, reaching for a white jar. Said to remove impurities from the skin. She unscrews the lid and the sharp, acrid smell makes your eyes water immediately. Inside is a white paste that supposedly bleaches the skin to the desired marble-like perfection. "Are you sure this is safe?" you ask, wrinkling your nose. Agnes hesitates. Lady Caroline swears by it, though her lady's maid told me in confidence that it burned her skin something awful the first week. And the alternative is... Agnes gestures to the array of other options, creams containing lead, mercury or arsenic, all guaranteed to create that coveted deathly pallor that signifies you've never had to work outside in the sun. "You know," Agnes says quietly, "my grandmother used to make a face cream from beeswax and rose water. Didn't turn you white as a ghost, but it kept her skin nice into old age." You consider this. A natural option sounds appealing, but would it be enough? Society doesn't want nice skin. It wants unnaturally pale, artificially perfect skin, the kind that shows you can afford to poison yourself slowly in the name of beauty. "Let's try the ammonia cream," you decide, mentally preparing for the burn, but not too much. Agnes nods and dips her fingers into the jar, then begins applying the cream to your face in light circular motions. The burning sensation is immediate, a chemical fire across your skin. Your eyes water and your nose runs, but you force yourself to remain still. "It's working, ma'am," Agnes says encouragingly. "Your skin is already turning whiter." "Probably because all the blood is retreating in terror," you mutter, which makes Agnes stifle a laugh. Next comes the powder, a fine white dust that Agnes applies with a large puff. It contains bismuth, a heavy metal that gives that desired matte finish. You try not to think about how it's slowly absorbing into your skin day after day, year after year. "Now for your eyes, ma'am." Agnes reaches for a small dropper bottle containing a clear liquid. "Is that the—" "Belladonna, yes ma'am, for brightening the eyes." You've used it before, drops made from deadly nightshade that dilate the pupils dramatically, creating a doe-eyed, luminous look that men find attractive. The side effects include blurred vision, sensitivity to light, and if used too frequently, blindness. But what's a little vision damage in the pursuit of beauty? "Just one drop in each eye," you instruct, tilting your head back. Agnes carefully administers the drops. The familiar burning sensation follows, then the strange feeling of your pupils expanding beyond their natural size, letting in too much light. The world becomes slightly fuzzy around the edges. "Beautiful," Agnes murmurs, "like starlit pools." You blink rapidly, trying to clear your vision. This temporary beauty will make reading impossible for at least 3 hours, and you'll need to avoid bright windows. A small price to pay, you're told. "Remember what happened to Lady Pembroke?" you ask Agnes as she prepares the rouge pot. "They say she went completely blind from belladonna drops." "I heard it was her own fault," Agnes replies, repeating the gossip of the servants' quarters, using them 3 times a day instead of once. You wonder what drove Lady Pembroke to such extremes. Was her husband particularly demanding? Did she feel the constant pressure to be more beautiful, more perfect, more doll-like for the male gaze? Or was she simply caught in the same beauty trap as all of you, competing in an endless game where the rules were written by men and the players were all women? "Now for your lips, ma'am." Agnes takes a small brush and dips it into a pot of red salve. This, at least, is relatively harmless, just beeswax tinted with carmine from crushed beetles. The irony isn't lost on you. The one beauty product that won't slowly poison you is made from insects. "Agnes," you say suddenly as she applies the tint to your lips. "Do you think our daughters will still be doing all this 20, 30 years from now?" Agnes pauses, brush in hand. Hard to say, ma'am. My mother wore a corset even tighter than yours. Said in her day they'd lace until someone fainted, then loosen it just enough to wake them up. That's horrible. That was fashion, Agnes shrugs. Though I did hear about some ladies starting a society against it all. The Rational something or other. Rational Dress Society, you supply, thinking of the pamphlet hidden in your desk drawer. Agnes nods. My cousin works for a lady who's joined it. Says they want women in shorter skirts and looser bodices. Some even wear trousers underneath like men. The idea is both scandalous and thrilling. To move freely, to breathe fully, to exist in your body rather than being packaged in it. What do you think would happen, you ask, genuinely curious, if I just didn't wear a corset one day? Agnes looks genuinely alarmed. Oh, ma'am, you couldn't. Your husband would notice straight away. And if you went out, why, everyone would talk. But what if all women decided at once they couldn't ostracize all of us? I suppose not, ma'am, but who'd be the first? That's the problem, isn't it? Someone has to go first. Someone has to brave the ridicule, the social suicide of defying convention. And despite your private rebellious thoughts, you know it won't be you. Not today, anyway. Now for your hair, ma'am, Agnes says, changing the subject. She picks up the curling tongs that have been heating by the fire. They're red hot, designed to create the tight ringlets currently in fashion. Your scalp still bears small scars from previous burns. An occupational hazard of Victorian hairstyling. Agnes is skilled, but accidents happen, especially when working with tools literally designed to burn. Have you heard about that new permanent waving machine? Agnes asks as she carefully wraps a strand of your hair around the hot metal. They say it can curl your hair for weeks, not just days. The Nestler machine? I read about it. Didn't the inventor burn his wife's hair off twice while perfecting it? That's what I heard, Agnes confirms with a slight smile. Must have been quite devoted to him to let him try a third time. You share a laugh at this, a rare moment of feminine solidarity across class lines. Both of you understand the painful absurdity of what women endure. The smell of singed hair fills the room as Agnes continues her work. It's not burning, just cooking slightly. Another unpleasant aspect of beauty that everyone pretends not to notice. Your friend Elizabeth visited Paris last season and returned with tales of women who coloured their hair with dyes containing lead, mercury and silver nitrate. Some had developed strange symptoms, trembling hands, headaches, even partial paralysis, but their hair was fashionably coloured, so many considered it a reasonable trade. Did you see Mrs. Whitmore at the Johnsons' dinner? Agnes asks as she works. Her new lady's maid used to work for an actress. Did her hair with something special. It did look unusually red, you recall. Very striking. Apparently it's henna mixed with something else. Can't recall the name, but her maid said it's turning Mrs. Whitmore's hair brittle as straw. Coming out in handfuls it is. You wince, not just from the hot curling tongs near your ear. Is there anything we do that doesn't eventually harm us? Agnes considers this seriously. Sleep, perhaps, though my mother always slept in papillotes to curl her hair and woke with awful headaches from the tight wrapping. With your hair finally arranged in an elaborate style that will require you to sleep sitting up to preserve it. Agnes steps back to admire her work. Perfect, ma'am. Now for the finishing touch. From a velvet-lined box, she removes your pearl earrings, heavy pendants that will drag at your earlobes all day, eventually stretching the holes until they tear, as happened to your grandmother. Beauty is pain, after all. I don't think I need the earrings today, you decide. Just visiting mother, after all. Agnes looks surprised but pleased. These small rebellions feel significant, even if they're tiny in the grand scheme of things. As Agnes helps you rise, you catch sight of yourself in the full-length mirror. The transformation is complete. You've gone from a natural human woman to a Victorian ideal, wasp-waisted, pale-skinned, bright-eyed, with elaborate curls and artificially reddened lips. You look beautiful by the standards of your time. You also look like you're slowly killing yourself, which, in a way, you are. The door opens and your lady's maid from the neighbouring estate enters, looking distraught. Begging your pardon, ma'am, but could Agnes come quick? It's Lady Russell. She's collapsed again. Agnes looks to you for permission, which you quickly grant. What happened? You ask the maid. Her corset, ma'am. Tightened it more than usual for the garden party. Couldn't breathe proper, and when she tried to sit for tea, she just folded. Doctor's been called, but the master is in a state. You exchange a look with Agnes. This happens more often than anyone acknowledges. Women fainting from oxygen deprivation, their compressed organs simply giving up. Usually they're loosened, revived and sent right back to the same practices that caused the problem. Tell Lady Russell I'll call tomorrow, you tell the maid. And Agnes, perhaps bring her that pamphlet from my desk. Agnes's eyes widen slightly, but she nods. A small act of rebellion passing forbidden literature, but maybe, just maybe, if enough women start questioning these practices. After Agnes leaves, you stand alone in your dressing room, surrounded by bottles of poisons, disguised as beauty aids. Your skin tingles from the ammonia cream. Your eyes struggle to focus from the belladonna. Your ribs ache from the corset. Your scalp stings from the hot tongs. All of this suffering for beauty, all of this danger for social acceptance. You think of your mother enduring these same rituals for 30 years. You think of Lady Russell, unconscious from a too tight corset. You think of the pamphlet now making its way to another potential convert to rational dress. Change comes slowly, then all at once. Perhaps you're witnessing the slow part, the quiet questioning, the private rebellions, the whispered conversations between women about whether there might be another way to exist in the world. You take a final look in the mirror. Today, you'll play by society's rules. You'll visit your mother corseted, painted and proper, but you've refused the arsenic wafers. You've skipped the heavy earrings. You've passed along dangerous literature. Small acts of rebellion, but they have to start somewhere. With careful, measured steps, the only kind possible in your restrictive clothing, you make your way downstairs to begin your day, wondering if your daughter or granddaughter might someday walk freely, breathe deeply, and exist in her body as nature intended. It seems an impossible dream, but then again, all change begins as an impossible dream. The carriage ride to your mother's home is uncomfortable. Each bump in the road jars your compressed organs, sending small shocks of pain through your abdomen. You try to sit perfectly straight, as slouching in a corset creates its own special kind of torture, the rigid boning digging into your flesh like knives. Your mother's home appears around the corner, a respectable townhouse with lace curtains visible through gleaming windows, the perfect Victorian home designed to showcase the perfect Victorian wife who maintains it. Your mother greets you in the parlour, her own waist impossibly tiny for a woman in her 50s. You wonder how many decades her organs have been compressed, reshaped, rearranged within her body. Has she ever taken a full breath? You can't remember ever seeing it. Darling, she says, kissing your cheek, you look acceptable, though your complexion could use some help. Have you tried those arsenic wafers I sent over? Not yet, mother, you reply. I've been feeling a bit unwell. She frowns. All the more reason to use them. Nothing enhances a woman's beauty like a touch of illness. Men adore the delicate look. She leans closer. Mrs. Carrington has been taking them for months and received 3 marriage proposals for her daughters already this season. You don't mention that Mrs. Carrington's youngest daughter confided in you that she's been coughing blood recently. Beauty has its price, and in Victorian England that price is often paid in health. "I've come for your advice, actually," you say, changing the subject. "The Hendersons are coming to dinner tomorrow, and you know how particular they are." Your mother brightens immediately. If there's one thing she excels at, it's managing a proper Victorian household. "You must impress them," she says firmly. "A woman is judged by her home as much as her appearance. It reflects your capabilities as a wife." And so begins a lengthy lecture on household management, the backbone of a Victorian woman's existence. While men run the outside world, women are expected to create perfect domestic sanctuaries. This is no small task, even with servants to do the physical labour. Have cook prepare something impressive, but not ostentatious, your mother advises. You don't want to appear as if you're trying too hard. Perhaps the duck with cherry sauce, followed by a Charlotte Russe. You nod, mentally adding these items to your list. Maintaining the perfect balance is exhausting, impressive enough to show your husband's prosperity, but not so lavish that you appear nouveau riche or wasteful. And make sure the parlour is immaculate, she continues. Mrs. Henderson has been known to run her finger along mantelpieces when she thinks no one is looking. You suppress a sigh. "I'll speak to the housekeeper." Do more than speak, darling. Inspect everything yourself. A proper mistress knows every inch of her domain. This is the expectation, that even with a full staff of servants, you will personally oversee every detail. Your role is not to do the work, but to ensure it's done perfectly. An impossible standard that keeps you constantly vigilant, constantly anxious. "Remember," your mother says, "the angel of the house must create a sanctuary for her husband away from the harshness of the business world. The angel of the house, that Victorian ideal of womanhood that's been drilled into you since childhood. The perfect wife who maintains a perfect home, all while appearing effortlessly beautiful, unfailingly pleasant, and eternally selfless. A domestic goddess who exists only to make others comfortable while ignoring her own discomfort." "And how is Henry?" your mother asks, referring to your husband. "Working hard, I assume." "Very hard," you reply automatically. "He's at his club this evening. Business matters." Your mother nods approvingly. As it should be, a man needs his freedom, and a wise wife never questions his absences. You think of Henry's late nights, the perfume that sometimes clings to his clothes, the lipstick stain you once found on his handkerchief. Your mother's generation would say it's simply a man's nature, something to be ignored in exchange for financial security and social standing. "Now, about the dinner service," your mother continues, launching into detailed instructions about silver placement and napkin folding. By the time you leave your mother's home, your head is spinning with instructions and reminders. The weight of expectations feels even heavier than your corset and layers of clothing. Back at your own house, you find the housekeeper, Mrs. Peters, waiting for you with a worried expression. "Begging your pardon, ma'am, but we've had an issue with the kitchen range. Cook says it's smoking something terrible." And so begins the real work of being the Victorian angel of the house. For the next several hours, you move from crisis to crisis. The kitchen range needs cleaning, but the chimney sweep can't come until Thursday. You'll need to find an emergency replacement before the Hendersons arrive. The parlour curtains have a small stain that everyone missed. They'll need to be taken down and cleaned immediately. The fishmonger delivered inferior quality salmon. You'll have to send someone to the market first thing tomorrow for replacements. One of the housemaids is showing signs of consumption. Do you dismiss her immediately to protect the household, or allow her to stay until she finds new employment? Each decision falls to you, not the physical labour, you have servants for that, but the mental load of managing this domestic machine, and all while looking perfectly composed, never letting anyone see you sweat beneath your layers of proper clothing. The table linens, ma'am, Mrs. Peters says, bringing you a selection. Which would you prefer for tomorrow's dinner? You examine each option carefully. This seemingly small decision could impact how the Hendersons perceive your entire household. Too ornate suggests trying to impress. Too simple implies carelessness. This one, you decide, selecting a cream damask with subtle embroidery. And the silver candlesticks, I think, but not the new ones. We don't want to appear boastful. Mrs. Peters nods approvingly. She understands the complex social calculations as well as you do. And shall I have the parlour fire lit an hour before they arrive? Mrs. Henderson is known to feel the cold. Yes, and make sure the drawing room is slightly warmer than the dining room. We want them comfortable throughout the evening. These minutiae, fire temperatures, linen choices, silver selections, consume your day. Your corseted body moves from room to room, inspecting, directing, ensuring that every detail is perfect. This is your domain, your purpose, your prison. You pause in the drawing room, suddenly light-headed. The combination of restricted breathing and constant movement is taking its toll. Spots dance before your eyes, and you reach for a chair. Ma'am, Mrs. Peters appears in the doorway, concerned. Are you unwell? Just a moment of weakness, you assure her, though your vision is still blurry. Perhaps I'll rest before dinner. But there's no time for rest. The household accounts need reviewing, tomorrow's menu must be finalised, and you need to write several social correspondence letters before evening. This is the hidden labour of Victorian womanhood, the constant mental and emotional work behind the facade of effortless grace. Men may mock women's leisure, but they don't see the complex machinery you maintain. In your private study, you review the household accounts with meticulous care. Every penny must be accounted for, every expenditure justified. Your husband provides an allowance for household expenses, and you're expected to work miracles with it. The butcher has raised his prices again. The coal delivery was short by nearly a bucket. One of the kitchen maids broke a teacup from the good service. Each entry requires a decision. A solution. You're essentially running a small business, but without the recognition or authority that would come with a formal business role. Instead, your success is measured by invisibility, the smooth running of a household where problems are solved before anyone notices them. Ma'am, your lady's maid has returned from Lady Russell's. I delivered that pamphlet as you asked. And how is Lady Russell? Recovered, ma'am, but shaken. The doctor advised her to loosen her stays, but her husband, Agnes pauses, then finishes diplomatically, prefers her current silhouette. You understand the unspoken reality. Lady Russell will continue to risk her health because her husband values her appearance over her well-being. It's a bargain most of you have made. She was most interested in the pamphlet, Agnes adds quietly. Asked if I might bring more information next time I visit. A small victory. Another potential ally in the quiet rebellion. You nod, pleased, then return to your accounts. By the time evening arrives, you've solved a dozen household crises, reviewed the entire menu for tomorrow's dinner, written 5 social letters, organised the flower arrangements, and inspected every room the Hendersons might possibly enter. All this while restricted by your corset, dress, and social expectations of proper feminine behaviour. You haven't raised your voice, shown frustration, or admitted to any physical discomfort. The perfect angel of the house, your husband returns home as you're taking a rare moment of rest in the drawing room. The house looks acceptable, he comments, which from him is high praise. I trust everything is prepared for tomorrow? Yes, of course, you reply, not mentioning the hours of work, the dozen decisions, the physical toll. Good, the Hendersons are important connections. Mr. Henderson could be very useful to my business ventures. And there it is, the real purpose of your domestic labour. Not your comfort, not even really his, but the advancement of his social and business standing. Your home is a stage set for his ambitions, and you are both the stage manager and a principal actor. Oh, and Margaret, he adds casually, wear the blue silk tomorrow. It gives you a more youthful appearance. You nod, though the blue silk requires an even tighter corset. You'll need to start lacing earlier to acclimate your body to the additional restriction. Perhaps you'll skip breakfast entirely. It's impossible to eat in that particular corset anyway. I thought I might invite Lady Russell to tea next week, you say carefully. She's been unwell. Your husband frowns. I've heard concerning things about the Russells. He mentioned that she's been reading some rather inappropriate materials, feminist nonsense about rational dress or some such. Your heart beats faster. Has he somehow discovered your own interest in the movement? You keep your expression neutral. How shocking, you murmur. I had no idea. Best to limit your association with her, I think. We don't need those sorts of radical ideas in our household. You nod again, the perfect obedient wife, while internally calculating how you might still communicate with Lady Russell without your husband's knowledge. The ladies' charitable committee, perhaps? He never pays attention to those womanly activities. I believe I'll retire early, you say. Tomorrow will be quite demanding. He waves a dismissive hand already buried in his newspaper. Your domestic labours are invisible to him, both the physical toll and the mental load. He sees only the results: a well-managed home, an attractively presented wife, a social reputation that benefits his business interests. Agnes helps you prepare for bed, a process almost as involved as dressing. Each hairpin must be carefully removed to preserve tomorrow's hairstyle. Your face must be cleaned of powders and paints. Your corset finally can be loosened. The relief is immediate and almost painful in itself, blood rushing back to compressed areas, organs shifting tentatively back toward their natural positions. You take a deep breath, your first full inhalation since morning. Will that be all, ma'am? Agnes asks, folding your discarded clothing. Yes, thank you, Agnes. You pause, then add, could you perhaps find more of those pamphlets? Lady Russell isn't the only one who might be interested. Agnes smiles slightly. I believe I could, ma'am. My cousin knows a lady who attends their meetings. Another small conspiracy, another tiny rebellion. Not enough to change your life today, but perhaps enough to plant seeds for tomorrow. Alone in your bed, you rub the raw marks on your ribs where the corset has dug into your flesh all day. Tomorrow you'll do it all again. The physical restrictions, the household management, the performance of perfect Victorian womanhood. But tonight, in these precious hours of relative freedom, you imagine a different world, one where women can breathe freely, move comfortably, and exist as full human beings rather than decorative angels of the house. It seems impossible, but then all change begins as an impossible dream. Morning arrives too soon. Your body aches from yesterday's constriction, but there's no time for recovery. Today brings the Henderson dinner, a social obligation that could advance your husband's business interests or damage them, depending on your performance as hostess. Agnes arrives with a cup of weak tea. All your compressed stomach can handle this early. We'll need to start earlier with the corset today, Mom, she reminds you. The blue silk requires a smaller waist. You nod, dreading what's to come. The blue silk dress was made when you were younger, before 2 pregnancies had changed your body. Achieving the necessary silhouette will require extreme measures. There's something else, ma'am, Agnes says hesitantly. I've heard the Henderson ladies have adopted some new fashion from Paris, something called a health corset. Health corset? You're immediately interested. What makes it healthier? It's cut differently, ma'am. Supports from the shoulders rather than just squeezing the waist. Ladies say they can breathe better in it. A corset that allows breathing. What a revolutionary concept. Do you think we could find one before tonight? Agnes shakes her head regretfully. Not in time, ma'am, but I've made some inquiries for the future. This small act of initiative from your lady's maid touches you. Agnes is becoming an ally in your quiet rebellion against the more dangerous aspects of fashion. Thank you, Agnes. Now let's get this torture device on, shall we? Today's corseting is worse than usual. Agnes has to brace her foot against your dressing table for leverage as she pulls the laces. You grip the bedpost so hard your knuckles turn white. I can't, you gasp at one point, spots dancing before your eyes. It's too tight. Just a bit more, ma'am, Agnes encourages. We're almost there. The final pull brings tears to your eyes. Your waist is now impossibly small, your breathing reduced to shallow pants. You feel lightheaded already, and the day has barely begun. 19 inches, Agnes announces with professional satisfaction. Smaller than last time you wore the blue silk. You try to feel proud of this achievement, as society expects. Instead, you feel dizzy and slightly nauseated. The pain will subside, Agnes assures you, though both of you know this isn't entirely true. The pain merely evolves from sharp and immediate to dull and chronic. Your body screaming its protest in whatever way it can. Once dressed, you force yourself to eat a few bites of toast, though there's hardly room in your compressed stomach. You'll need some sustenance to get through the day of preparations ahead. In the drawing room, you find your 2 daughters with their governess. Eleanor, 14, is already wearing a training corset, less restrictive than an adult's, but designed to gradually mould her growing body into the desired shape. Emma, just 7, still enjoys the freedom of childhood clothing, though in a few short years she too will begin the process of physical restriction. Mother, you look beautiful, Eleanor says dutifully, having already learned the expected compliments. Thank you, dear. You study your older daughter, noticing how she sits perfectly straight, never leaning back against the chair. Her training corset doesn't allow it. Already she's learning that comfort must be sacrificed for appearance. Later that morning, you visit the milliner to collect your new hat for church on Sunday. The fashionable creation sits like a small garden on your head, complete with silk flowers, stuffed birds and decorative feathers. The latest style from Paris, the milliner assures you, adjusting the angle. The birds are particularly fine, genuine hummingbirds from South America. You study your reflection, admiring the craftsmanship while trying to ignore what it represents. Entire species of birds are being hunted to near extinction for ladies' hats. Some estimates suggest that 50 million birds are killed annually for the millinery trade. It's an environmental catastrophe disguised as fashion. And these? You point to the foot-long hat pins needed to secure this creation to your hair. Stainless steel with pearl tops, the milliner says proudly, strong enough to hold the hat in any weather. You don't mention the news story you read recently. A woman whose hatpin accidentally stabbed a man on a crowded omnibus, causing a serious injury. Some cities have begun passing ordinances limiting hatpin length or requiring protective tips, but fashion resists these safety measures. "And will you be wanting the matching parasol, ma'am?" the milliner asks hopefully. You decline. "One dangerous fashion accessory is enough for today." Back home, preparations for the Henderson dinner are in full swing. The house smells of beeswax polish and cooking, and servants hurry about with last-minute tasks. You supervise it all while fighting the discomfort of your too-tight corset, which seems to grow worse as the day progresses. By mid-afternoon, you retreat to your bedroom for a brief rest, a necessary concession to your physical state. Lying down in a tightly laced corset is its own special form of torture, so you recline carefully on a chaise lounge, propped up by pillows. Agnes enters with a concerned expression. "The mistress next door sent this over, ma'am. Thought you might want to see it." She hands you a newspaper clipping about a young woman who died after a dancing party. The coroner's report cited tight lacing as a contributing factor. Her waist had been compressed to 17 inches, causing her organs to be dangerously displaced. During the exertion of dancing, she collapsed and could not be revived. 17 inches, you murmur, thinking of the women you know who achieve even smaller measurements. And still women continue the practice. "It's expected, isn't it?" Agnes says simply. "No one wants to be the first to stop." The door opens again, and your younger daughter Emma runs in, then stops abruptly at the sight of you in your formal dress. "Mamma, why do you look so different?" she asks with childish directness. You smile. "It's a special dress for important guests." "But your middle looks wrong." Emma frowns. "Are you sick?" Out of the mouths of babes. You exchange glances with Agnes. How do you explain to a child that yes, you are making yourself sick, compressing your organs, restricting your breathing, risking your health, all for the sake of a silhouette deemed attractive by society? "It's just fashion, darling," you say finally. "When you're older, you'll understand." But you hope she won't understand. You hope that by the time Emma is grown, the fashions will have changed, that she'll never know the pain of tight lacing or the danger of lead-based face powder. Emma seems unconvinced, but accepts your answer for now. After she leaves, Agnes helps you to your feet. "Time to finish dressing, ma'am. The Hendersons will arrive in 2 hours." The final preparations are torturous. Your hair must be styled elaborately, requiring you to sit perfectly still while Agnes works with hot curling tongs. Each movement sends pain through your compressed torso. Your face must be painted to achieve the fashionable pallor. Belladonna drops sting your eyes but create the desired dilated pupils. By the time you're fully dressed, you can barely breathe. The weight of your clothing, corset, petticoats, bustle, dress, comes to nearly 15 pounds, all hanging from your constricted waist. Moving requires careful calculation. Sitting must be done precisely, perching rather than truly resting. "You look perfect, ma'am," Agnes assures you, standing back to admire her work. Perfect, but at what cost? Your ribs throb where the corset has shifted them. Your lungs can only partially inflate. Your internal organs are compressed into unnatural positions. Even your skin burns from the chemicals meant to whiten it. The first warning sign comes as you descend the stairs to greet your husband. A wave of dizziness hits, causing you to grip the banister. Your vision tunnels briefly, the edges going dark. "Are you well?" your husband asks, noticing your pause. "Just a moment of light-headedness," you assure him with a practiced smile. "It's past now." He frowns slightly. "You can't afford to be ill tonight. The Hendersons are crucial connections. Not concern for your health, but for the social impression you'll make." You swallow your resentment and nod agreeably. "I'm perfectly fine," you lie. "Just excited for the evening." The Hendersons arrive precisely on time. Mr. Henderson, a business associate of your husband, Mrs. Henderson, a social climber of renowned determination, and their 2 daughters, both of marriageable age and corseted to painful perfection. "My dear, you look wonderful," Mrs. Henderson gushes, air-kissing your cheeks. "That shade of blue is so becoming." "As does your gown," you reply automatically. "Is that the new Worth design from Paris?" She preens. "Indeed it is. Frederick insisted, though the cost was shocking. This is the expected exchange. Compliments, subtle boasting about expenditure, the performance of femininity, all while both of you struggle to breathe in your fashionable cages." Dinner proceeds according to rigid Victorian protocol. The men discuss business and politics. The women maintain pleasant, empty conversation about fashion, children, and household matters. The younger Henderson girl, Clara, seems particularly uncomfortable, shifting constantly in her seat. "Are you well, Miss Clara?" you ask quietly during a lull in conversation. She blushes. "Quite well, thank you. Just a new corset. Mother insisted I needed a smaller waist before the season begins." You recognise the signs, the pallor beneath her rouge, the shallow breathing, the way she barely touches her food. Clara has been laced too tightly, probably for the first time. You remember your own introduction to extreme corseting, the days of nausea and dizziness until your body surrendered to its new shape. "Perhaps some air would help," you suggest. "We could step onto the terrace for a moment." Mrs. Henderson frowns. Clara is perfectly fine, just a bit of maidenly excitement about her upcoming debut. The message is clear. No acknowledgement of physical distress is permitted. The polite fiction must be maintained. Women do not suffer for beauty. They achieve it effortlessly. As dessert is served, you notice Clara's face growing paler. Her breathing becomes more rapid, her movements more rigid, classic signs of what doctors call corset syndrome, the body rebelling against its unnatural confinement. Before you can intervene, Clara suddenly gasps, her face now ghostly white. She attempts to stand, then crumples to the floor in a dead faint. The table erupts in controlled chaos. Mrs. Henderson fusses ineffectually. Mr. Henderson looks annoyed at the interruption. Your husband signals for servants to assist. "Loosen her stays," you instruct the maids who rush to help. Quickly, Mrs. Henderson looks scandalized. "In mixed company? Surely not. Would you prefer she suffocate?" you ask sharply, your own discomfort making you less diplomatic than usual. The men retreat to the drawing room while you and Mrs. Henderson oversee Clara's recovery. Once her corset is loosened, revealing angry red welts where the boning has dug into her flesh, she begins to revive. "I'm so sorry," Clara whispers, tears of embarrassment in her eyes. "Nonsense," her mother says briskly. "Just a momentary weakness. Once you're used to proper lacing, these episodes will pass." You meet Clara's eyes and see the hopelessness there. This is her future. Years of gradual physical damage in pursuit of the ideal silhouette, just as it has been yours. When the ladies rejoin the gentlemen for coffee, Clara's corset has been retightened, though not quite to its previous extreme. She moves carefully, like someone recovering from an injury, which, in a sense, she is. "All resolved?" your husband asks pleasantly, as if a young woman hadn't just collapsed from socially mandated body modification. "Completely," Mrs. Henderson assures him. "Just youthful delicacy." The rest of the evening passes without incident, though you notice Clara barely speaks. Her focus is entirely on maintaining her composure while fighting the restrictions of her clothing. As you bid the Hendersons goodbye at the end of the evening, you press a small card into Clara's hand. On it, you've written the name of a dressmaker who secretly creates less restrictive corsets, one Agnes discovered through her growing network of fashion rebels. Clara glances at it, then quickly tucks it into her glove, giving you a grateful look. Another small act of rebellion. Another potential ally in the quiet revolution. After the guests leave, your husband pronounces the evening a success. Henderson seemed impressed. I think we can expect an invitation to partner in the new venture. You nod, too exhausted to speak much. Your body screams for release from its constraints. Every breath is a struggle. You've been corseted for nearly 14 hours now, and the physical toll is mounting. You did well, he adds, which from him is high praise. Though I noticed you seemed rather concerned about the Henderson girl. No need to make such a fuss over a simple fainting spell. Women are naturally delicate creatures. You bite back the response that women aren't naturally delicate at all. They're made delicate by practices like tight lacing. Instead, you smile and agree, playing your expected role until the end of the evening. Finally, blessedly, you can retreat to your bedroom. Agnes helps you undress, carefully unlacing the corset that has been your prison all day. "Oh, ma'am," she says softly, seeing the deep red grooves and bruised skin beneath. "This is worse than usual. The price of a 19-inch waist," you say with grim humour. "Help me to bed, please." As Agnes assists you, you catch sight of yourself in the mirror, your torso temporarily deformed by hours of compression, the natural curves of your body replaced by an artificial shape dictated by fashion. "Do you think it will ever change, Agnes?" you ask, wincing as you settle into bed. "This tyranny of fashion?" Agnes considers this as she prepares your nightclothes. "My grandmother wore stays all her life, but nothing like what ladies wear now. And my mother says when she was a girl, the fashions were looser. Things do change, Mom. Perhaps they'll change again." "I hope so," you murmur, thinking of your daughters, especially young Emma, still free but destined for the same constraints. For their sakes, if not for ours. Agnes extinguishes the lamps, leaving you in darkness. Your body gradually relaxes, organs slowly shifting back toward their natural positions. The relief is exquisite yet painful, like blood returning to a limb that's fallen asleep. In the darkness, you make a decision. Tomorrow, you'll write to that address Agnes found, the meeting place of the Rational Dress Society. You'll make inquiries about healthier corset designs. Small steps, perhaps, but steps nonetheless. You drift towards sleep, imagining a world where women can breathe freely, move naturally, exist comfortably in their own bodies. A world where beauty doesn't require slow self-destruction. It seems an impossible dream, particularly in this rigid Victorian society. But then, all change begins with an impossible dream. Weeks pass, each day bringing the same routine of constraint, both physical and social. But beneath the surface, small changes are brewing. Agnes has become your willing conspirator, bringing pamphlets and whispered information about the growing movement for dress reform. You've made cautious inquiries through the Ladies' Charitable Committee, finding other women who share your quiet discontent with fashion's more dangerous demands. Today, an envelope arrives addressed in unfamiliar handwriting. Your husband is at his club, so you open it without hesitation. The Rational Dress Society welcomes inquiries from ladies concerned with health and comfort in women's attire, meeting Thursday next, 3 o'clock, Mrs. Wilberforce's residence. An address in Bloomsbury follows, a respectable but progressive neighbourhood. This is it. Your first opportunity to connect directly with the movement you've been secretly following. "Agnes," you call, trying to contain your excitement. Please check my social calendar for Thursday afternoon. Agnes appears, a knowing look in her eyes. You're free until dinner, Mum. Shall I arrange the carriage? Yes, but discreetly. I'll tell my husband I'm attending the hospital charity committee. This small deception feels justified. Your husband, like most Victorian men, would never understand why his wife would want to associate with those radical women who challenge fashion's dictates. Thursday arrives with agonizing slowness. You dress more simply than usual, selecting your least restrictive corset, still uncomfortable by modern standards, but positively liberating compared to your formal stays. How do I look? You ask Agnes nervously. Not too conventional, I hope, but not scandalously bohemian either. Agnes studies you with an appraising eye. Respectable but open-minded, ma'am. Perfect for a first meeting. The journey to Bloomsbury feels like an adventure, though you're merely travelling across London. Your heart races with a combination of excitement and anxiety. What if someone recognises you? What if word gets back to your husband? What if these women are truly the dangerous radicals that society portrays them to be? Mrs. Wilberforce's home appears perfectly ordinary from the outside, a handsome townhouse with lace curtains and polished brass. No hint that inside revolutionary ideas about women's clothing are being discussed. A maid shows you to a drawing room where about 15 women have gathered. They range in age from young debutantes to grandmothers, and in class from what appear to be shop assistants to ladies of considerable means. What unites them is a shared interest in freeing women's bodies from fashion's most dangerous demands. "Welcome," says a stately woman who introduces herself as Lady Harberton, one of the society's founders. "We're always pleased to see new faces." You murmur your name, relieved when it elicits no particular reaction. Your social circle hasn't extended to these progressive women before. "Please, sit down," Lady Harberton indicates. "We were just discussing the rational dress exhibition planned for next month." You take a seat, noticing immediately that many of the women are sitting differently than in your usual social gatherings. They lean back comfortably, they cross their legs, they move with a freedom that suggests less restrictive undergarments. "Our new friend might appreciate seeing some examples of rational dress," suggests a younger woman. "Constance, would you do the honours?" A striking woman with intelligent eyes stands and moves to a side room. She returns carrying several garments which she lays out on a table. "I'm Constance Wilde," she introduces herself, and you recognise the name with a start. The wife of Oscar Wilde, the famous writer and aesthete. These are examples of what we consider more rational alternatives to current fashion. She holds up the first item, a corset unlike any you've seen before. "This is what we call a health corset," Constance explains. "Note how it supports from the shoulders rather than compressing the waist. It allows for natural breathing and movement while still providing the structure that many women feel they need." You examine it with interest, noting the practical design. It would still shape the figure, but without the extreme compression that makes traditional corsets so dangerous. "And this," she continues, "is perhaps our most controversial item, the divided skirt." She holds up what appears at first glance to be an ordinary skirt, but upon closer examination reveals itself to be very wide-legged trousers disguised as a skirt. "For cycling, walking and general freedom of movement," Constance explains. "All the modesty of a skirt with the practicality of trousers." A murmur runs through the room. Even in this progressive gathering, the idea of women wearing anything resembling trousers is shocking to some. "I wore a similar garment to a restaurant last month," Lady Harberton says, with a mischievous smile. "They refused to serve me in the ladies' dining room. Said I wasn't properly dressed, can you imagine? 15 yards of fabric covering every inch of my legs, and I was considered improperly dressed." Laughter ripples through the group. There's a camaraderie here, a shared understanding of fashion's absurdities that you've never experienced in your usual social circles. What brings you to us today? Lady Harberton asks you directly. Most women find us through some personal crisis with conventional fashion. All eyes turn to you, curious but supportive. You take a deep breath, easier in your less restrictive corset, and find yourself sharing the story of Clara Henderson's fainting spell, your own daily discomfort, and your concern for your daughter's future. I don't want Emma to grow up thinking she must torture herself to be acceptable, you finish. But I don't know how to change things for her when the entire society enforces these standards. Nods of understanding greet your words. Many of these women have daughters or nieces of their own. That's why we exist, Constance Wilde says gently. Not to force change overnight, but to create alternatives, to educate and to support each other in making healthier choices. May I see the health corset again? You ask. I'd be interested in trying one. For the next hour, you're introduced to a world of alternative fashion you never knew existed. Lightweight fabrics that don't require heavy petticoats, boots designed for walking rather than just appearance, hats that can be secured without dangerous hat pins. Most importantly, you're surrounded by women who question the status quo, who prioritise health and comfort alongside appearance, who believe women deserve better than slow self-destruction in the name of beauty. We're not suggesting women abandon beauty, Lady Harberton explains as tea is served. We're simply advocating for a beauty that doesn't compromise health. My husband designs aesthetically pleasing clothing that doesn't torture the wearer, Constance adds with a smile. Oscar believes beauty should never require suffering. You think of your blue silk dress requiring that punishing 19-inch waist. Could there truly be beautiful clothing that allows for natural breathing, comfortable movement, healthy internal organs? As the meeting continues, practical matters are discussed. How to order healthier clothing options discreetly. How to introduce rational dress ideas to skeptical friends and family. How to handle social criticism when making even small changes to conventional dress. Many of us begin with underwear, an older woman advises, a less restrictive corset, more reasonable petticoats, things that improve comfort without creating social scandal. This approach appeals to you. You're not ready to wear divided skirts in public, but you could certainly adopt a healthier corset for everyday wear. By the time the meeting ends, you've ordered a health corset, subscribed to the Rational Dress Society's discreet newsletter, and made connections with several women who live near enough to maintain regular contact. Will we see you at next month's meeting? Lady Harberton asks, as you prepare to leave. We'll be discussing rational dress for young girls, perhaps relevant for your daughter. Yes, you decide. I'll be here. The journey home feels different. You sit more comfortably in the carriage, already imagining how much better you'll feel in a less restrictive corset. For the first time in years, you feel a sense of hope, not just for yourself, but for Emma and her generation. Agnes is waiting when you return, eager for details. You share everything in the privacy of your dressing room, watching her face light up at the possibilities. Do you think they make such corsets for ladies' maids? She asks, hopefully. I'll inquire, you promise, or perhaps have one made for you when mine arrives. This conspiracy between you deepens your bond. No longer merely mistress and servant, you're allies in a quiet rebellion against fashion's most harmful demands. Your husband notices nothing different when he returns home. You play your role perfectly, the attentive wife, the accomplished hostess, the social asset. But beneath the perfect exterior, something has changed. You've found your voice, connected with like-minded women, taken your first small step toward freedom. 2 weeks later, a plain package arrives. Agnes brings it to your dressing room with barely contained excitement. Is it The health corset, you confirm, unwrapping it carefully. Let's try it immediately. The difference is remarkable. The new corset still provides structure and some shaping, but it distributes pressure more evenly, supports from the shoulders, and allows your lungs to fully expand. For the first time in years, you can take a deep breath while dressed. "How does it feel, ma'am?" Agnes asks as she helps you dress. "Like freedom," you say simply. Your day unfolds with unprecedented ease. You can bend to pick up a dropped handkerchief. You can climb stairs without stopping to catch your breath. You can eat a normal meal without discomfort. Small freedoms, but revolutionary in their impact on your daily life. That evening, you attend a dinner party wearing your new corset beneath a high-necked evening gown. No one notices any difference in your appearance, but you notice the difference in how you feel: alert rather than lightheaded, comfortable rather than in constant pain. Lady Russell is among the guests, and you find a moment to speak privately with her. "You look well," she comments. "There's a new energy about you." "I've been making some changes," you say carefully. "Have you heard of the Rational Dress Society?" Her eyes widen slightly. "I have their pamphlets. Are you—" "I attended a meeting. It was illuminating. This shared secret creates an immediate bond. For the rest of the evening, you and Lady Russell exchange glances whenever the conversation touches on fashion or women's health, conspirators in a gentle revolution. Over the following months, you make additional small changes. You order walking boots with sensible heels. You gradually reduce the weight of your petticoats. You forget to use belladonna eye drops when not attending important social functions. None of these changes draw particular notice. Your husband, focused on his business and social climbing, hardly registers the subtle evolution in your appearance. As long as you present appropriately at important functions, he has little interest in your daily dress. Your daughters, however, do notice. 14-year-old Eleanor watches you curiously as you move more freely, breathe more easily, seem more comfortable in your own body. "Mother, is your corset different?" she asks one afternoon while you're arranging flowers together. You pause, considering how to respond. This could be a crucial moment in your daughter's life. "Yes," you say simply. "I've found a healthier design that's still quite proper. Would you like to see it?" Eleanor's eyes light up. "Could I have one? My training corset pinches terribly." "I think that could be arranged," you say.